Born 26 November 1960, Emmanuel Munaile. Thank you for taking time. Who is Emmanuel Munaile?
Well, Emmanuel Munaile is a Zambian boy, born in a village called Makasa in Northern Province, Mungwi District. Went to school there in Makasa, started my primary in Makasa, and ended up at Mungwi Secondary School. I'm a married man, married to Precious, and we have kids.
You were a little bit of a cult hero at Mungwi, and I want us to discuss your formative years in football. And you played for your school team. How big was that?
I started playing football even before I went to secondary school. I grew up as a son of a storekeeper in my village, and my father used to buy me footballs. In those days, we played balls that were brown, which were made from then Czechoslovakia. Those are the balls I started playing with. My dad used to buy a lot of them, and being a storekeeper, I easily had access. And by the time I got into grade 6, I think I was 12 years of age. I was playing in the school team, in the reserve team.
You were never a victim of that, let's say, touch your ear situation?
I was.
You don't look to be the tallest. I'm wondering the little boy in you.
When I went into grade 1, we were not taught to touch the ear. Instead, because we were too many, what they did was to put yes and no. You know, they write on papers yes and no, fold them and place them on the table. So what you picked is what you wear. If you picked a yes, you started grade 1. If you picked a no, out. You didn't start school. So I picked a yes, and that is how I started grade 1.
You started off on a very lucky note then.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you playing for the school team, born in the village, did you ever have your sights on playing at the highest level at that tender age?
As I grew up, I must say that I was a hero in my village, because my age mates could not match me. And as I already said, my father was a storekeeper, so we had access to the radio. So whenever Zambia was playing, would be all my colleagues and those older than us would come and would listen to Dennis Liwewe, you know, commenting whenever Zambia played. And at that age, I think when I was quite young, I told myself one day I must play for the Zambia national team. And my father was such an encouragement that even when I was at primary school, he would come to watch, and if I did something that impressed him, I would find Sprite and Coca-Cola waiting for me when I got back home.
He was a soccer fan to the heart.
Yes, he was, but he was, normally my mother never approved of me playing football.
I'm now thinking what the politics meant between Mr. and Mrs. Munaile about Emmanuel and him playing football.
As I've said, my mother always said no, but my father never stopped buying footballs for me, and all the time he would say, "What are you talking about? You know, that's what my dad would tell my mother.
What was mom's problem with football?
You know, I was the firstborn and the only son. We are only 3 of us, and I was the firstborn. And my mother treasured me so much that she was quite influential, that she stopped me from doing some of the things I would have loved to do, because she said, "You are the only boy I have, so you need to take care of yourself." So she looked at football as being too risky. So that was the biggest problem.
So would it be right to say you learned the art of politics and negotiating from that? Because I'm sure at a very tender level age, that's politics at its height.
Yeah, of course. Never forget that during the time we were growing up, I think by the time we were getting into the 70s, the prominent political party was UNIP. And my father was the constituency chairman for UNIP. So I grew up in a home where my dad was quite involved in politics.
And yeah, he would win even the domestic politics under the rope.
Of course, of course. It was much easier for him to win it. And of course, my mom could not take away what was already inherent in me. You know, she couldn't take away the passion, the football passion, the love for the game. You know, I would come home even in the night when we were playing as young boys. Time didn't matter. You remember okay guys, we'll play 10 goals. 5 half time or change goal. Used to call it change goal, 10 finish ball. That's how we call it. 5 change goal, 10 finish ball. And you could play the whole day, even up to the following day, because you couldn't get the 10 goals.
Okay, let's fast forward a little bit. So you had the privilege of going to school, and you ended up attending national service. Tell us about that one.
Well, when I left Makasa Primary, I was selected to go to Mungwi Boys Secondary School in Mungwi District. And the first thing that happened to me was there was a football match that was arranged between the Form 1s and the Form 5s. And the football captain at the time were coming from the same place. So I played in that game. Unfortunately, they didn't give us boots, but the seniors had boots, the Form 5s had boots. So one of them stepped on my toy and it got so swollen, and from that day I said I will not play football again. And I started playing volleyball. I have a very good friend of mine, Apostle Munaile, Steve, who started playing football. So when we were in Form 2, which is grade 9 now, there was what we called junior championships, which involved Form 1s up to Form 3 before this whole thing was changed. And there was going to be a championship in Mpika, and they were busy training. I was busy playing volleyball. So I just saw guys come there and say, no, you have to, the football captain comes and says, we want you to go and play football. So they came, and that is in a nutshell, that is how I started playing football. And by the time I was leaving the Mungwi Secondary School, I was the football captain for the school, and I had the privilege to play in the provincial championships, both at school level and club level. So after that, we went to the national service, where I met a lot of very good footballers. Unfortunately, some of them didn't play, but others tried to play. And there's so many stories I can share about the national service, but I'll try to be as brief as I can be. The goalkeeper for the national service team was our goalkeeper at school. He was a year ahead of me. So I didn't want to be part of their football, but he told the bosses, the instructors there, that there is a guy I went to school with, he's a very good footballer, but he doesn't come.
Yeah, because of that toe injury.
No, by then I was no. You
were healed,
now I was already. I just didn't want. I didn't see it necessary. So they followed me and picked me. That's how I started playing at Zambia National Service.
It was an order.
Can you say no? Instructions, once they're given, you carry them out. That is how I started playing, and fortunately, Major Richard Kachingwe, who most people know as a politician, was the chairperson or chairman, or as we called them then, of that team. We had a wonderful time. I think the people of Northern Province, those who will be privileged to watch this program, will remember how we turned Kasama upside down whenever we went to play there. We didn't even have a stadium in Kasama as it is today, or as they have today. We had Useko ground, and whenever we played there, it was packed. So when I go to Kasama today, I think among the teams that I played for which are still standing, there are only two. Malalo for the Police, Tazara for the Police, Tazara Blue Eagles. By that time, it was also for the Police. Oh, plus Kateshi Coffee. So the rest have gone because they were either for most of them were for parastatal companies. So that is how I was now a little bit older. I think I was in my about 18, 19 years of age at the time. And it was fun. When I finished national service, I joined Tazara. My first job was with Tazara at Kapirimposhi. And I started playing for Tazara Rockets, as we were called then.
What was your deployment at Tazara?
I was a supplies clerk. I was working in the supplies department. That's where I was. I didn't work there long, though. I was only there for 6 months. Okay, I played long, but the job, when they gave me the job, I only worked for 6 months and I left to go and join then ZCCM Frida Division. And that is how I started playing from Frida Wanderers.
What was your impression when you arrived in Furila? And as a boy, who were you looking up to? Because it's something that you have not made apparent reference to. Who were your cult heroes?
I wouldn't be able to specifically say who was my hero at the time. But when I went to Mufrida Wanderers and I found them training at Central Sports, it was a big team. Mufrida Wanderers.
Nothing like you've ever seen.
You're talking about players. Ifod Chabala in goal, Ashos Melu, Kalusha Bwadia, Frederick Ashmoto, Benjamin Bwadia, Kalepa. It was a team of complete players. So even when I went there and I saw them training for the first time before I started training, I sat there and then I asked myself a simple question: can I make it in this team? Are you getting what I'm saying? That's the kind of football that was there.
What position were you competing for at Mighty at the time?
Well, at the time I wasn't competing. I went to play football and I was ready to play anywhere, as long as it wasn't in defense, because I was a striker. And at the end of a few days, I was picked to play for Frida Wanderers. And that is how I resigned, left, and relocated to Frida.
Tell me about working with Zoom and Akim Senge when you arrived at Mighty.
I think
let's start with Zoom.
He was ahead of his time.
What does that mean?
The kind of football that he wanted us to play. I don't think there was any other team that played the kind of football that Wanderers played.
What was the norm and what did Zoom want?
This is what I'm trying to explain. He was not a coach who believed in putting the ball forward. He wanted all the time to start football from the goalkeeper. Whenever he had the ball, he has to pass it throw it to the nearest. If Ivo Chabala to take a long ball, it is because the situation demanded so. It was not a matter of just pumping the ball forward. No, we started playing from the rear, going forward. And a very good, he was a disciplinarian. He never broke nonsense.
What was that normal at the time? Was it the kind of football you grew up playing in Mungui and the like? Or you'd kick the old ball forward and say, "Leta fie, leta pamulu"?
Well, I think when you're playing football as young boys, you played it in a certain way. It's not structured. Nobody's telling you what to do and what not to do. At times you have the ball, you want to beat everybody because nobody's telling you to pass the ball. When it is right. At times we passed the ball when it wasn't right, but we passed it. But now when you come into a system like I found at Mufulira Wanderers, a lot of things began to change, because then you are expected to play as a team, and you had to abide by what the dictates of the team.
It brought out the best in you, I presume.
I must confess, the first few years I struggled
with the passing game.
Because not with the passing game, with the competition. The competition was too much until I began to understand the culture. Because I had to understand the culture. I had to understand the way Wanderers play football for me to fit into the team.
Did it help when people like Kalu began to leave for Seko Bruges?
By the time Kalu was leaving, he was at number 11, I was at number 10. So he wasn't leaving, he did not leave at the time I was not playing. No, the time he left, we played our last game here, the champion of champions of 1985. Mufulira Wanderers, in fact it is Green Buffaloes versus Mufulira Wanderers. That was Kalusha's last game. And I scored the winner. Wanderers beat Buffaloes 1-0. And I scored that goal to take the Champions of Champions Cup, which was sponsored by Zambia Railways at the time. No, Colgate Palmolive at the time.
Tell me something. When we mentioned the name Zoom, it's a big name in our football, let's face it. And you tell me that he was way ahead of his time. And even when we fast forward 30, 40, 50 years after him, we come back to the basics that this is what Barcelona want to do, this is what every big country want to do. But why hasn't that sticked in the Zambian footballing DNA? Because you find some teams don't pass the ball and whatnot.
Yeah, but you have to understand that every coach has a philosophy.
With the amount of success Zoom managed to rake up.
Yeah, well, that's what I want to say. Those of the old days, the supporters, the fans of Mufulira Wanderers, loved the way Mufulira Wanderers used to play. And I think that is why they have a problem today, because the older generation I'm talking about, they want to remember those days, which is not coming. You get what I'm saying? I think most of those who grew up in the old days, the excitement that Mufulira Wanderers brought, because I think it was the only team. You went to Chingola, you found Chingola-based Mufulira Wanderers supporters. You went to Konkola, you found them. You went to Rwansha, wherever you went. When you came to Lusaka, it was worse. So, so much has changed over the years.
Tell me something. The complaint sometimes, I get it a lot in the new millennium, is that the quality of pitches is not very good to support that type of football. And I want to get it from you, having played in a village, okay? Was Zoom's idea highly dependent on the type of infrastructure that is available for it to be successful?
I don't think so. When he played football himself, played football in a certain way. And I want to believe he wanted that translated into what he wanted to see his team play. We had the Akimu Musenge, who played as a defender both for Wanderers and the national team. All right? They wanted football played in a certain way, and the way they wanted football to be played is by knocking the ball, knocking the ball, knocking the ball. Because when you pump the ball up, it is anyone's ball. That's what he used to tell us. If you pump the ball forward, it's anybody's ball. You are not aiming for anybody. You get what I'm saying? So they wanted us to start, and then you move on and you play. But I can tell you, I have had the privilege to be coached by most Zambian coaches and also some European coaches. Zoom was among the best.
Straight from heaven.
I don't know.
Okay, let's go to the end of the decade, the 80s. Then you start now snooping on the KK11 door, is it? You make your debut in 1986 against Zaire.
Yes.
The feeling, how did that happen? Now it was like your dream coming true, I want to presume.
Yes, it was actually a dream come true. At the time I was also at the peak of my career at Mufulira Wanderers. And I was privileged to be selected. And we played Congo, Zaire at the time, at Dagamashot Stadium, which most of you may not even have the privilege to have watched football there. When I'm passing through Dagamashot driving in Ndola, and I look to the right as I'm going to the Kafubo River, and I see the structures that are coming, and I take myself, Zambia has no history. We played there and we drew 2-2. And then we came to the Independence Stadium and played against them and we lost 1-0. So that was the beginning of, opening my eyes.
Heartbroken? Well, what did you learn? I'm sure the national team shirt was something else now.
Oh yeah, I think I see a lot of differences today when I see what our boys do, how our boys play, and I compare to those days, because just donning on a shirt for the national team, even for your club, was a privilege. And that is something everybody wanted to do. And it was a good experience, I must say.
I want to ask you this. In the 80s, late 80s, perhaps Zambia's name as a country was up in lights regards the Seoul Olympics. And that time they would take the national team proper. You were in that generation.
Yes, I was in that generation, but it was a generation full of competition. By the time Zambia was going to the Seoul Olympics, Zambia had started exporting footballers, which meant that competition to most of the players, most of us who were playing from midfield going up, became stiff, given that the defenders were all local. They were all playing in the local league, except from a few from the midfield. We had Charles Musonda, Kalusha Bwalia, Johnston Bwalia, Geoffrey Mlenga, we had Stone Nyirenda. Are you getting what I'm saying? So the competition began to be very, very stiff. And unfortunately, I couldn't make it.
On qualitative grounds?
Well,
did you believe that it was just normal, like?
There were many times I believed I could have been preferred. But at the end of the day, there's only one person who makes decisions, and that's the coach. And every coach's decision, we have to respect.
Did anybody explain to you why you were not flying to the east?
You don't need to be explained to. Why
no, I'm saying, no, did you bother at the time?
No. I don't.
Or even today?
Let me tell you what used to happen. For example, most of those days we had ZCCM, right? Meaning that we camped most of the time in Rwansha, at times in Frila, at times anywhere else. And then the coach would just come and say, the following are the team or the players that will travel. You're seated, and then they'll say, blah, 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 blah. Do you need to raise your hand and ask the coach, why not me?
No, just in the corner.
Well, as a young man growing, if it was now, I would ask. But those days we respected them so much that you could not go to them and say, but why have you left me?
You'd never have side conversations with them?
Well, you can talk about anything else, but I think to challenge your coach why you are not in the team, all you look to is to...
You didn't even ask what you should do?
Well, there are times they would advise you. You see, you have to improve in these areas, you know what I'm saying. But it wasn't something that you can sit down and begin to discuss on a one-to-one basis.
They said the competition was that bad, and would you say you are you're beginning to feel like you're born in the wrong generation? Because when we go to Annaba, 1990, Algeria, you also don't make the trip. Were you now beginning to feel that,
no,
I was born in the wrong generation?
No, I was not born in the wrong generation. I can tell you, those who watched me play for Mufulira Wanderers, I was very dependable. Very dependable. By the time I was leaving Mufulira Wanderers, they felt the gap. So I was not somebody you'd think I think if I was able to make it among the first 11 from Mufulira Wanderers in those days, it tells you I was good enough. And the 1990 Africa Cup, which was played in Algeria, where Zambia came out third, I was in camp. And like I alluded to, we expected so many players to come. You get what I'm saying? So many professionals to come to play football in Algeria. Unfortunately, they did not make up. They did not make it. So the Zambia team that played in the 1990 were less than 18. Only one player arrived. But the reason for my remaining was that, no, because these other people are coming, we would want you to take over and go with the team that was going for the SADC tournament in Mozambique. But at the end of the day, it turned out that most of the players that were expected did not actually make it.
When it was fashionable for the likes of your peers from Foreigner, Charles Msonda, Belgium, Kalu, Belgium, did you actually now turn your attention to say, you know what, I too want to go to Europe. I too should go to Europe. But I'm not playing for the national team when it mattered most.
I believe that everything in life has its own time. I want to believe that what is yours will always be yours. There are times people have forced things and have failed. So it was not about playing in Europe. For me, that was not a priority. The priority was to play for my team and play better.
Let me ask you this. You come from a deeply African background. And when I read some of the memoirs of Zambian football and the history, there's this talk about juju, the use of juju and football. What are your feelings about that subject?
First of all, I want to tell you this, that witchcraft exists.
You've seen it with your own eyes, or you've been told it exists?
The Bible talks about it. And if the Bible talks about it...
My question still
I'm coming. Just let me explain. It means that something exists. Now, you have maybe two kinds of people. I played with players who couldn't play football without something. That was their belief. So
at Munaile or throughout your life?
Wherever I played. So you could not take that away from them. It was a belief. And there are those who believed that they could play football without anything.
What about the coaches?
There are coaches who believed in it and those who did not.
What did it mean if your coach believed in the use of juju?
Well, you must understand that, I don't know, maybe some teams. There are teams where coaches would bring everything to everybody and say, this is what we are going to do. Are you getting what I'm saying? And I must say that over the years, people began to realize you needed to perfect your art. You needed to perfect your talent. You needed to play better than to depend on things that were, were outside. When
was the first time you met the use of juju in Zambian football?
This is going to sound funny. I remember as young boys playing in a village, and
and you know why I'm asking you this?
That is what I want.
There's a belief that people from the village use more juju than...
No, that's not true. That's not true. But I want to remember this one incident. where we were playing as young boys, and then we were playing against another village, and then within ourselves somebody said, but those guys, so but we just no, me, I know something. And all he did was go to some shrub, picked something and gave it to the goalkeeper. That every time they kick the ball will be, going astray. But that was just a joke. But seriously speaking, when I began to play competitive football, that's when I began to see the real issues about the use of juju.
National team.
As I have said, it depended on people, it depended on individuals, but anyone who can say that our generation, that he never saw anything to do with juju, would not be telling the truth. The only difference is there were those who believed and those who did not believe. But even if you did not believe in them, we saw it happening.
Tell me something. Out of 10, your generation credits itself to be like, we're the best, we were at a very high level and whatnot. Out of 10, how much would you give it to the use of juju and what juju brought to the table? And how much of it was just normal, raw, natural talent?
You can't talk about talent. Talent was massive. You can't talk about talent. I have seen a lot of talented players in this nation. Without talking about juju, are you getting what I'm saying? There were times you'd be, when you are playing, you are a striker, right? And the ball is in your half. The opposing team is playing. You are actually admiring how your defense is being, beaten. That's the kind of football we watched. But I will not dwell so much on the use of juju. Like I've said, there are those who believed, there are those who did not believe.
How did you manage it personally?
Well, I think in my later years, I gave my life to the Lord. It even helped me more, because then I began to see things from a different perspective.
Where
I came from in my village, my father didn't know anything to do. He couldn't even give you anything, even if you were sick. He knew nothing apart from the clinic. So I was brought up in a house or in a home where such things never existed. And that is what I was brought up with.
So from not believing it existed, you become born again, and then you say, whoa, this thing exists, and then...
No. Even before I became born again, I could see with my eyes. I could see what people would do. How do you explain? You are going for a match. Some people stop on the middle of the road and begin to do certain things. You are going into the dressing room. Others are throwing salt and all these things. What is it for?
What is the strangest juju tale you've ever seen?
I can't see.
No, I'm saying based on what you saw. Sprinkling of salt.
There's so many things. Even when you traveled. I remember in 1986, we went to the Eastern Central Africa Challenge Cup in Mwanza, Tanzania, as Mufrira Wanderers. It was a club championship. And we were playing against this team. I won't mention the name. And by halftime, we're leading 1-0. And the referee asked us to get into the stadium, to get into the field of play from the dressing rooms. And we are all going into the stadium. And a car came directly, you are playing a match, coming straight to the dressing rooms. Our colleagues, instead of getting into the field of play, they went back to the dressing room because they had come. But we still beat them.
I want to ask you this. On the juju tip, there was this story about, is it Kafwanayo?
Oh,
where there was that story that a named goalkeeper would see when the ball is short, you would see a train coming. So instead of catching
I cannot comment about such things, because such things I don't think that I never saw that, and the only person who could have probably said that are those who played with him. I was not in that group.
But you think of a train.
I don't know how a ball can change into a train, or arrows coming at you. I don't know.
Sure. It's not easy. Let's go to 1990, shall we? So you miss out on the Algeria Africa Cup. Zambia has got a reduced number of players, but you captained the team in 1990 under Fred Munaile.
Yeah,
and you go east.
As I said, after I left, because I was told we are expecting so many, and there is this championship that is coming, you needed to go there. And Freddy Munaile was the coach, and we traveled to Mozambique. There was a celebration that was 10 years of SADC existence. So teams, different sports disciplines, they had picked countries. I think basketball was played in Zambia, others were played dotted around the region. Football, one group was in Mozambique, another group I think was in Botswana, if my memory serves me right. But in our group there was Zambia, there was Angola, there was Zimbabwe, there was Mozambique, there was Lesotho. And we came out first from that group. And we came to Lusaka. I captained that team. We came to Lusaka. We played Tanzania. We beat them 2-1. And when that, after qualifying to the finals, because the finals were to take place in Gaborone, where the SADC headquarters is located. So the team had to change, because now everybody was available. I think from the team that played in all these areas, I was the only one, probably one or two guys, who were able to make it to the finals. You know, that's how football, unfair football can be. People had played and taken the team to the finals, but only a few of us made it. Unfortunately, not even my coach, if I remember, was able to be part of it. That is my coach, Fred Munaile, who we had worked well. I had worked with him so well.
Such things I hear are very dangerous in a dressing room. How do you keep those players that you've asked happy or comfortable or not frustrated that next time they come, they'll be bitter about what happened last time?
Football is full of frustrations. And there are times you are told you are not going to be part of the team, and yet you know you are better than Zite. Why should Zite go and not me? But then you have to prove yourself. And I think that is what makes football better. That makes it competitive. Because when you are asked, you want to prove a point the next time you are called.
Let me ask you this. 1992, you missed the Africa Cup again, and by that time you're a mature player. Basically, you've got quote-unquote nothing to prove, like you have earned your stripes. You've even captained the national team. And you don't go to
Zingisho.
Zingisho, yes.
In Senegal. This is what I'm saying. There are a number of things that are put into consideration.
What kept your head above water?
Yeah, but there are times God preserves us for certain things. Until you realize, some things when they are happening, you don't realize until something else happens. I want to believe God saved me for a purpose. And that purpose was unrealized after the Gabon disaster.
That was my next question.
You get what I'm saying? If I was part of what was happening, I would be dead by now. But I think God had a better plan for me.
Were you, at that time, when the team was going to Senegal for that World Cup qualifier, where was your heart regards playing for the team? Because over the years, big tournaments you didn't play. Did you want to play, or it was like, if they come, they come. If they don't,
you have to understand that for me, the most important thing was to play for the national team. And that I had done. even before the team was flying to go to Senegal. And all those players who perished, others were in my generations, others came later, because there were young boys in the team that died. And by then coaches had changed. Zoom was no longer the coach. They brought in people who also wanted to have, you know, whenever you change something, there's something that also changes. You don't expect somebody's been given a position of a managing director of a company to keep everybody. You look at who he wants. You need to look at who can I work with. So for me, I have no regrets. I have no regrets whatsoever.
No, I'm saying when the squad was going for 93,
I wasn't even
specifically.
I wasn't even part of the team. That is what I'm saying. God had a better, you know.
How did you hear the news of the Gabon air disaster? Where were you? What were you doing?
I was working for Zambia National Commercial Bank in the IT department, and that particular morning, you know, the way the computer department was set was in such a way that we had offices, and then we had the computer room. And the computer room, you only went there because you had something to do, and most of the time would be like, you know, seated in the offices. But that day I was inside, and my assistant manager then walked in, because once you are there, you don't know what is happening outside. And he says, "Hey man," jokingly, I said, "Boss, what is it?" "Man, namfati wa Zambia ndekena ipona." Those who were going to Senegal, I said, "No, sir, you are joking. It's not true." Because the first thing that came to mind was my colleague, my very close friend, Ifod Chavala. And I abandoned everything and walked out of the building. And when I walked out of the building, where you see Indo-Zambia Bank there, I could see, you know, people talking in groups. But I went straight to Soli Pando's shop on the other side of Cairo Road. And he said, "Yeah, Emmanuel, that is what has happened." I was devastated. I can tell you, I was devastated. But then at the end of the day, you realize that there is a reason.
What were your parting words with the late David Chaval?
Unfortunately,
when was the last time you spoke before?
No, yeah, before they flew out, we normally we spoke about, you know, when you're not expecting anything. What else can you talk about? Okay, boy, when do we know you find, you know what I'm saying? And that was the last time I saw him, and I think the country was devastated. The country was in mourning. The country was, I think, it was a sad development.
Now, emotionally struck, what did that then mean for you?
Well,
did you believe that finally, okay, now I'm one of the older guys, one of the experienced guys. They probably need me to play. They didn't need me in the past, but now they need me.
No, I wasn't thinking like that, because when it happened, I think nobody talked about Zambia playing again. But a few days later, people began to say, we can go on. You get what I'm saying? We can go on. And even when people began to say, no, Zambia, we should go on with this and all that, I personally did not consider it important. I didn't consider it important until I was told we have to assemble a team.
The little boy in you didn't want to play football again?
No. Not that I didn't want to play football, but at that time we were focusing on putting the remains of our colleagues to rest. You understand? And when this was done, then people began to say, no, now that the team is buried, And we have a match which was not fulfilled against Senegal. We needed to go on. And that is how they began to look at who should be here, who should be where, you know what I'm saying? And that is how the reconstruction began. But what most people did not understand at the time was that the players that remained playing in different clubs, most of them had an opportunity to play for the national team. So we had so many of the experience. So many players were experienced. And that is why it was easier to bring a team together and play again.
What was the secret in the system for us to rise the way we did after the Gabon air disaster?
After the Gabon air disaster, there was the Copper Belt team. They selected a number of coaches who picked a team from the Copper Belt. They selected a number of coaches who picked a team for the Midlands. And then we played together to pick the final squad. Our first game, I was privileged when the team was constructed, when the team was reconstituted. I was privileged. I was made the captain of the team before Kalu arrived and the rest. And we played against Malawi at the Independence Stadium. And in fact, we played 3 matches. We played in Chingola, we played at Ada Davis, and we played in Lusaka. The kind of emotions that were there, especially when we came to Lusaka, because mind you, were playing at Independence Stadium, and just across
There was the Heroes Acre.
The Heroes Acre. Independence Stadium was packed to the rafters.
Did you ever feel that emotion ever in your life?
Yes, I think that time now emotions began to, we began to feel the emotions as players and as a team, and we beat Malawi 4-1.
How important was Fred Munaile? The reason I ask this is that in the past, you and Fred Munaile were axed from the Polo Polo.
No,
and
I think
you come back, Fred Munaile is back, you are back, you are captain. Things have changed.
I must tell you this, that Fred Munaile is a good coach. There's many of us, even as we were playing, who did not understand him as we were growing up, because he'll tell you anything. Oh, come on, Basani. We can come on. You know what I'm saying? But when it comes to football matters, he understood what he wanted the team to do. He also believed in playing football. He didn't believe in, he also believed in playing football. And
so you met a lot of people who like.
Oh yes, we had the privilege. I was privileged. I think for me and others who grew up in our generation, we were privileged to see Zambia's best coaches, mature,
local, but local again.
I'm talking about local.
Who taught these people? Who taught them the
But I
the
think
art?
most of them, they had the privilege to go abroad and learn. Don't forget, Fred Munaile played for Atalanta. He went to Atalanta Chiefs. He played for what's this team in the UK?
Aston Villa.
Aston Villa. All those experiences brought together. Fred Munaile, Zoom played for Blackpool in the UK. They went to different coaches in Germany, in England. So they were very, very, very qualified.
Let me ask you about someone who wore the jersey number 10 in Zambia. And yeah, I don't know whether he's the greatest player we've ever produced, but you've had the privilege of playing. You didn't play with him. Yuka. I hear the man was...
Yeah, well, at the time I was playing.
Was special on and off the pitch.
He was also going out. I think he had an injury with his arm, and that helped. That made him stop quickly. But he was a very good scorer. He was a very good goal scorer, and I think he You've heard the debate of saying, why has he not been recognized by FIFA that he scored 107 goals in a season? You get what I'm saying? That defines a man. That tells you what kind of a man he was.
But you played with computer, Alex Computer Chola.
Well, he was playing for Power Dynamos. I was playing for Mufrira Wanderers. And in the Power Dynamos team, you had Peter Kaumba, Toshak, Alex Chola, Mike Omsonda, the late Wisdom, Lucky Musiska. That's the kind of team that Power Dynamos had. So you'd watch Alex playing against your defense and you just wondered, you marveled at that man. What he could do with that small body, it was unbelievable.
Who's the greatest player you've ever seen in this country?
Well, I've seen so many great players, and for me,
up to now, which player still makes you nod your head and say,
well,
this man?
I would be wrong if I don't mention my colleague Kalusha. Among the players, because him, it was day in and day out. Before he left for Belgium, I played with him for 3 seasons. So I was able to see what he was able to do day in, day out. Are you getting what I'm saying? Others, I met them at a later, maybe you are playing for the national team, you are playing against them, but this is a guy I played with on a daily basis. You know, he lived in Dongwe, I lived in Chilebe, and whenever I was going to Central Sports, I would pick my bag, pass through his house, and we go for training. You know, and I think he was also, in our generation, brilliant.
Best player you played with in your generation?
For the same team? Yes.
What about generally?
No, generally.
At the national team, who cuts it?
No. My generation is that of Kalu and the rest. I didn't play with master computer for the national team. But in our generation, he stood out.
Tell me something. Who goes to a country that is being governed on racial lines to go and play football, which is not recognized by FIFA in 1993? Who simply does that? What motivated you to go to Dynamos?
I'll give you the history. I think by 1987, when apartheid was at its peak, we began to see a number of the Zambian players trekking to South Africa. And when they tell you stories, how they managed to get into South Africa, you'd shake your head because it was too risky. Remember, by 1993, Mandela was released in 1990, so the tension began to ease. So it was easy to go there and play.
But FIFA never recognized that. Why?
By that time in 1993, they were already admitted. Remember, we played them in Joburg in 1992 in the Africa Cup qualifiers, and they lost. We beat them 1-0. So at that time, they had already been admitted to FIFA.
Was the money that good?
At the time, yes. It's even better today.
So it was an economic decision.
Who doesn't want to better himself financially, if I may ask?
That's a yes.
Precisely. Oh, I must say, I was working for Zambia National Commercial Bank. I had a good job. And one day we were in camp at the Sun Hotel, the Holiday Inn, and one man walked in who owned Dynamos of South Africa and said, Emmanuel, I spoke to some ministers, I don't want to mention names, and they have told me that we should take you. We want you to play for us. And I said, okay. I was privileged. I had a good working relationship with my bosses at the bank. I had Bill Homan, who was our chairman, Mr. Shamtete as treasurer, Mr. At that time, I think I can't remember who was the managing director at the time I was leaving, but if I'm not mistaken, it must have been Mr. Magande, the former finance minister. So they gave me the go-ahead to go and play there.
What was your experience there?
Very good experience. I learned a lot from there.
For the first time, you lived in a country that, and I don't know, the apartheid regime or systems, were they broken by the time you arrived, or you could tell that this place?
No. At that time, a lot of things. I think from the time Mandela was released in 1990, a lot of things began to change in South Africa, because you could find blacks everywhere. The segregation, the barrier, I think at the time was broken, and where they gave us flats in Lay State flats, and I think it was easy to go about your business. It was nothing to worry about. There was nothing else. There was nothing to worry about. You could do a business.
Just making good old money.
Well, if that's the way you want to put it. But it was also an experience, because it made me know something else.
Tell me something. You hung up your gloves just mid-90s, just going forward. You play your last game for the Chipolopolo against Gabon. We lost 2-1. I want to think, for all it's worth, when you look back at your national team career, was it a personal choice, or you were retired in national interest?
I think when we came back from Gabon, mind you, I captained that team in Gabon. We lost 2-1. I won't go into details. By then I was already born again. Some of the things I began to see made me realize the best way was to leave. And I remember then Rod Posen coming to take over as national team coach. And when we came back, it was actually the coach we were with in Gabon. And then I said, I didn't even tell him, but he read in the newspaper that I'd hung up my boots. Then when we met, then he says, Emmanuel, why have you stopped? What will you be doing? I told him, there's so much to do apart from football. That's how I stopped.
Let me take you back to CAN 94. We talked about how you were on an emotional curve and how it was like, I would die a little for this country. Then you don't go.
Because some people decided not to.
What was your relationship with Porterfield?
I had a very good relationship with Porterfield, to the extent that even when the team came back from 94, he came to me and said, Emmanuel, I made a big mistake. I want you back in my team. I was misled, because Zambians are very good at,
What was said about you?
Well, some of the coaches felt that I wasn't good to be part of the team after we had played so many games and made it possible for Zambia to go to the Africa Cup.
Was it you as a person?
Maybe there's something they didn't like about me, I don't know, but the coach was taught something that made him make a decision and carried some players who couldn't even play. And then when he came back, he realized I would have done much better than some of those who went. But I respected their decision.
So when he came and said, I'm sorry, made a big mistake,
I joined the team.
You seemingly want to tell me here now that you never put anything to heart. Ever.
Let me tell you something.
From 86.
In life.
And we're talking about 94.
Yes, in life, if you are going to worry about what other people are doing against you, you'll have a short life. Learn to forgive and forget. So even if somebody insults you and you are carrying a grudge against that person, who is the loser between you and that person? It's actually you. Because that person will go about his business while you're hating. I don't want to carry a grudge against anybody, because God expects you to forgive, because we are forgiven of our transgressions, of our sins. Why don't you forgive?
What did you want to do when you said there are many things to do other than football? When you're retiring, what was the next plan? Did you calculate it already, or you're like...
I had a job in the bank, and for me that was enough. Mind you, I never even, when I was playing football, I never even dreamed of becoming a coach. For me, coaching was never a priority.
Why?
Because I just wanted to concentrate on the job.
By the way, your passion with computers, that's what made it possible for you to work in a bank. How did it start?
I left Munaile Wanderers in 1989 to come to Lusaka, about July 1989. And by the time I was living in Munaile, I was a trainee personnel officer those days, before the human resource thing came about. And I was exposed, in those days, we were already exposed to the computers by ZCCM. So when I got here and they gave me a job, I told them I needed a job in the computer department. And that's how they gave me a job, and later I trained, and that's it.
Okay, so coaching was not your thing. So year 2000, you were elected a member of the executive committee of the Football Association of Zambia.
Yeah. But before, I need to say this still. Even though in me, I told myself that coaching, I will not take coaching as a career. But I was privileged to coach some teams around. In 1991, I was still a player, and those who were our coaches were fired because the team was almost, Zanaco was almost in the relegation, just getting relegated. And I was asked to take over. And I saved the team, and then the other people came in to coach. In 1996, I coached a team called Ramlex. 1996, 97, Smata was a chairman for City of Lusaka. He asked me to help, and that is how I went and coached City of Lusaka. Before we could even finish what we had started together, I was called to go to Zanaco and start coaching Zanaco. And between these periods, I was privileged to go for training. In Zanaco sponsored me to go to Germany for 2 months to train as a coach. Of course, there were so many local coaching courses I attended. And then later on, I was also privileged to go to Samares University in Hungary for 3 months to learn how to coach. So despite all this, not being interested, but I was still privileged to,
You're being forced?
No, I was not being forced.
It was duty, because your employer is saying go for training, so go for training.
You can't say no. So even before I became a first executive member, I was privileged to understand or to learn how to be a good coach.